On the night of April 19th, 2019, 5 men set up camp in the hollow pine basin of the Argent River wilderness, and by the next morning only one of them remained, despite the fact that nothing at the campsite had been touched, moved, or disturbed in any way. The trip was nothing. 5 guys from the same machine shop in Delford taking a long weekend before spring overtime kicked in. They drove up in 2 trucks on a Friday afternoon, hauling a cooler of cheap beer, a propane stove that never worked right, and the kind of tents you buy from a hardware store and use twice. The man who survived is John R. Maddox, then 34, a welder with no criminal record and no reason anyone could find to lie. The first thing that went wrong was firewood. By 6 o'clock, the temperature had dropped to 39 degrees and the pile they'd gathered near camp was already gone. John volunteered. He told investigators he walked roughly a quarter-mile west, deeper than he meant to, because the closer deadfall was wet from a storm 2 days earlier. He spent about half an hour filling his arms with dry branches. He remembers the light going orange, then grey, then the rustling. He assumed it was a deer. The sound moved through the leaves to his left, paused, then started toward him. He called out twice. The noise got faster. He called a third time, and whatever it was broke into something close to a run, crashing through the brush in a straight line at him, and John did the only thing his body would let him do. He dropped the wood. He pulled the 2 hunting knives off his belt, drove them into the bark of a young pine, and climbed, jamming the blades in one above the other until he was 30 feet up in the new spring foliage. The man came out of the trees about a minute later. In his statement, John described him as ordinary. Average height, dark clothes, no mask, no weapon, nothing strange about him at all except that he made no sound and did not seem to breathe hard after running. The man stopped at the pile of dropped firewood. He looked at it for a long time. Then, slowly, without searching the lower branches first, he tilted his head straight up toward John, as though he already knew the exact height. John stayed in that tree for 2 hours and 40 minutes. He knows the number because he kept checking his watch to keep from panicking. The man stood at the base the entire time and never once looked away. At 9:51, the man simply walked back into the dark, unhurried. John climbed down around midnight and used his flashlight to find the trail back. The following account is reconstructed from his statement and the county incident report, file number AR-2271. The camp was intact. All 4 tents stood zipped or half open exactly as they'd been left. The fire had burned down to coals. Both trucks were parked where they should be. His friends' phones, wallets, and boots were inside the tents. A beer sat open and still cold on a folding chair. Dennis A. Collery's reading glasses rested on his sleeping bag, folded. The men were gone. John searched for nearly 2 hours, screaming names into the trees before he drove to the ranger station on Route 11 and then to the sheriff's office in Delford. By 4 in the morning, a search was underway. Over the next 36 hours, they brought in dogs, 2 drones, and 41 volunteers. They found nothing. No footprints leading out, no drag marks, no blood, no torn fabric, no broken branches beyond the ones John himself had snapped climbing. The dogs tracked each of the 4 missing men a short distance from their tents and then lost the scent in open ground in 4 different directions, as if all 4 had stepped off the planet mid-stride. The lead investigator, Sergeant Marlene K. Osterhaus, told the regional paper she had worked missing persons for 19 years and had never seen a scene so clean. "People leave marks," she said, "even when they don't want to. These men left nothing." "That's not how it works." John was questioned for 11 hours. He passed 2 polygraphs. There was no body, no motive, no physical evidence he had done anything but climb a tree. The case stalled. The trucks were released to the families. The tents went into an evidence locker, where they remain. The 4 men, Dennis A. Volery, Samuel Teague, Brian Olari, and Christopher M. Dunn, were never found. In November of that year, 7 months after the trip, John received a plain white envelope at his apartment in Delford. No return address. The postmark was smudged past reading. Inside was a single photograph printed on cheap glossy paper, slightly overexposed by a flash. It shows all 4 of his friends seated around the campfire, the same fire John had seen burned to coals. They are smiling, all 4, directly into the lens. The metadata on the back, stamped by a developing machine, lists the capture time as 6:53 in the evening on April 19th. 1 minute after the dogs say they vanished. A 5th man stands behind them, slightly out of focus, looking at the camera. It is the man from beneath the tree. John gave the photograph to Sergeant Osterhaus. She had it examined. There were no fingerprints on it but his own, and one more set on the back that matched no one in any database. They were still warm when the lab logged them in.